Well, this was a pretty big mixed bag for me. To start off this brief review, let's address the elephant in the room: price point. This is going to be a huge part of whether anybody does or does not buy the Order of Giants, and I think it is a very important part of the conversation regarding what it actually brings to the table. This is a lot of why it is a mixed bag for me. The DLC by itself is $20, but the Digital Deluxe Edition upgrade to the base game was like $35. I got it for about $30 on sale months ago, thinking that the DLC would be like, $30 independently, if it ever had an individual listing, but the fact that there was no individual listing for the Order of Giants until release day actually feels a little bit scummy to me personally, because of this kind of honestly pretty insane pricing. Relatively speaking, this means that a few wallpapers and the Temple of Doom outfit that are part of the Digital Deluxe package are $15. That is just absolutely bonkers. Nothing justifies that to me. And because I foolishly bought it months ago, like I said, after I played the base game, I had no hope of being able to refund it and just get the DLC separately, because I only had limited use of the wallpapers and I never used the Temple of Doom outfit. I really wish I could have refunded the deluxe version and then bought the DLC separately, but alas, it wasn't going to happen. In my opinion, $20 is not the worst price point for the Order of Giants, but I'm also heavily influenced by the fact that I effectively paid $30 for it, which I don't think is worth it, just straight up. So take that in stride with the rest of my views here. Price will be a big deal for whether this DLC is worth it. If you bought the base game and love it and want more, yes, go ahead and get this if you're already eyeballing it. Maybe consider waiting for a sale if you think $20 itself is a little steep, which I could understand. If you played Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on Game Pass and did not already plan to buy the game just to own it, and you want to know whether the DLC is worth buying the base game and DLC for, no, most likely not. One of the things I like the best about the Order of Giants is how much effort went into placing it within the game. Rather than being a post-game chapter or otherwise having a particular spot where it's meant to be played per se, Machine Games made the DLC's relationship with the rest of the game variable. This means that depending on where you are in the game, still in the Vatican, where the DLC is accessible from, or in Giza, or in Sukhothai, wherever, the actual leveling and tactics of the enemies in the DLC changes, at least according to them. Their health and their damage and maybe a couple of maneuvers grow to match whatever you've already faced before. This means that no matter what time you decide to play the DLC is valid. Evidently, a lot of time went into this aspect, for better or for worse. For what it's worth, I really like this decision actually. The only implicit question to me is how much of what could have been more expansion might have been sacrificed for the time to make this scaling work. It's kind of hard to say. I don't think we'll ever know, but a lot of players have noticed that the DLC is a bit on the shorter side, and the memes about it being the Order of Sewers or whatever kind of makes sense. The vast majority of the expansion does in fact take place underneath Rome, whether that be in the sewers directly or in your typical Indiana Jones style dungeons of sorts. One of these criticisms I'm inclined to agree with, the other one less so, though I still understand it. So let's start with the former. How long does it take to play the Order of Giants? Well, disregarding the obvious inherent variability to such a question, it's realistically a handful of hours maximum, basically regardless of how you play, and assuming the playtime doesn't balloon from getting stuck on some puzzles, which we will discuss later. And on top of that, how does the added Rome add to the runtime and explorable space of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? Unfortunately, it's not much. For reference, when you say you're going to add an area in Rome as a selling point, I think it's reasonable for the players of the base game to assume and expect for that to translate approximately to the other major playable areas of the game. The Vatican, Giza, and Sukhothai are all pretty large and decently open areas with several branching off sections, some for the main quest, some for side quests, some just for puzzles and collectibles and other world building type of stuff. Each section took me as a completionist approximately 10 hours to complete. That's a somewhat rough estimation, but for the sake of averages, it basically works out. Compared to a handful of hours max in the Order of Giants for the entire DLC, yeah, needless to say, I and many others have been somewhat underwhelmed by this package. So what does the DLC entail? I'd say it's basically just an extra intensive side quest like from the main game. It's definitely got more going on than any of the other side quests in my memory, but that doesn't actually say a ton. I feel like I recall most of the side material of the base game being made up of go to the place, do the puzzle or two, complete the quest type of variety. If you insert a couple repeats of that basic formula and make the quest go through a couple extra sub areas, then that's basically what the DLC is made up of. This isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but we return to the point of Rome as an explorable area. It doesn't really exist. It's a criticism I actually understand quite a lot. I don't necessarily hold this against the product as much as many others, but many others do, and that's kind of the point. At one point, like a third of the way through, you emerge in the street of Rome, and you exist in this space, which is as big as like the very opening section of the Vatican from the base game, when you're not even properly in the Vatican yet. Then once you're done here, you emerge from the sewers later in this very small section of the River Tiber around the area, which you use to navigate back underground again pretty much immediately. If I'm not mistaken, this is literally all of the time, quote-unquote, in Rome you will spend. So yeah, if you were expecting anything remotely the size of any of the major areas of the base game, the Order of Giants definitely does not provide that. So what does the Order of Giants provide, if not these things? It's a good question, and fundamentally, the answer is in the gameplay. I didn't spend a ton of time on the details of this in the review for the base game, but the main gameplay loop of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is adventuring and spelunking, moving about spaces ripped straight out of an indie film, coming across intricate and interesting puzzles, and solving those just to see what mischief comes of it. Well, if the puzzles are what you liked best, I can recommend the Order of Giants to you without much second thought. That's definitely the thing this DLC does the best. Or the most, rather. I think those two might be different phrases. The reason why this is a question is because I personally think the execution of them is somewhat variable. One of the puzzles is really good, a couple of them have a super solid foundation, but I was personally left wanting or confused or unable to figure them out intuitively, and a couple more still were just straight up, how in the world do you expect me to even figure this out? If you have not played yet and do want to be surprised by all of the puzzles, I recommend skipping till the start of the next section, since I'll be going over basically all of them here. Now, in fairness, there was one of these that I just completely forgot about, the taking extra pictures with the camera provides hints thing, and that was the serpent puzzle. But making the final cover not raise up because something is stuck in the mechanism in the roof was super cheap in my opinion. Bruh, this entire time, are you serious? That is insane. But I don't even know actually if the camera would have revealed this particular thing and made it any easier for me. I just wound up wasting like a half hour trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. I guess it didn't help that I also managed to accidentally raise the third covering anyway, so I became very unsure if I actually understood the mechanics of the puzzle in the first place. The Tomb of Gaborim puzzle was a little bit better. Its multiple steps were intuitive enough as a whole, but I do think the connection between the locations and how they're referenced in the clues is vague enough that I felt it was just as much, if not more so, trial and error than it was my actually figuring it out, if that makes sense. That kind of frustrated me. Some of the minor puzzles also feature solutions which make sense after they're revealed, but actually putting them together myself didn't work out. Tale of Wine was sort of this way. The Collegial Mystery safe unlock was definitely one of these moments where my getting the code was just as accidental as it was anything else. I'll at least do the 1-2 part. I'm going to assume that that's 2 cherubim, and then I guess we'll just see if I happen to be right about that.
Still got it.
Okay. I'll take it, I guess, but that doesn't make sense to me. Anyway. But the worst one was absolutely the Monster Gate puzzle. Holy, this one is a lot. There are a few different layers to it. For myself, I gotta admit it was just too much. I had no idea where to even start with it, and I had to use a walkthrough basically for this entire thing. I'm not even going to try to explain how exactly the puzzle works in this video, because I'm not sure I could do it concisely in a way that makes sense. Looking back on it, things seem much more doable with this one, but to the version of me that had never encountered it before, debatable. But even now that I have played the DLC, if I got to this puzzle again replaying it right now, I would probably still be here a little while actually getting all the steps done. The problem that can arise in puzzle design like this is not just making things doable. It's about making the player feel clever for figuring it out, allowing them to figure it out, and not tricking them either, like in the serpent puzzle. Unfortunately, most of the puzzle design in the Order of Giants is not clever. It tends to run on the more obtuse end, where trial and error is just as much the solution as the solution itself. At least that was my experience with it. And maybe I'm just dumb. I know sometimes I am very, very bad at video game puzzles, but for myself, this just didn't work. The one puzzle that did not struggle with this in the DLC, and was more akin to the vast majority of puzzles in the base game in my memory, was the Gladiator Maze puzzle. The pictures of the statues tell you what order to have the flaming ball go through the pillars, and you just gotta be the logistics guy to let that happen. Good. Maybe it's because that's just the particular flavor of puzzle I enjoy more, but I definitely didn't love most of these puzzles, and when that's a huge chunk of the DLC's experience, that's pretty disappointing. But if you just love puzzles in general, I still think you will be receptive to this DLC. Though I was personally disappointed, not everybody will be. Although, I suppose I should clarify. The day I finally got around to playing the DLC was a very emotional day in general for a variety of reasons that I won't go into here, so I do not discount the possibility of my headspace affecting my performance with the puzzles, but I do not believe they had enough of an impact to notably change my feelings about them. Half of these puzzles, after all, were actually completed before said emotional stuff, so that was absolutely not the only thing going on. Anyway, what else does the gameplay have? All the stuff is the base game. If you liked that, you'll like this in the end. But how about the conceit? How does that hold up? Decently. For reference, spoilers about the story inclusions of the DLC will permeate the rest of this section. After the, in my opinion, best Indiana Jones stories have all been pretty firmly situated in the Christian mythos, it was cool to get a distinctly Roman storyline to subvert that expectation here, with a different mythos, yet still somewhat relating it to the base game, just a little bit. See, the base game utilized giants and Nephilim as a major support tool in the storyline. The DLC, while not furthering the base game storyline to any significant degree, does explore a little bit about the giants. After all, it is in the title, and one in particular who you actually get to fight as a boss at the very end. I won't explain the story too deeply, as I know there were at least a few things I missed, and I plan to replay the game with the DLC in the future anyway, but I loved the angle of making the story here about a legendary Colosseum warrior who, for interesting reasons, connects to the Minotaur of Crete in Greek myth. The way the Order of Giants combines the giants alongside some Greco-Roman story ideas was an angle that I was not expecting. I was especially not expecting to be confronting the behemoth at the very end of the road in a colossal game all my own, too. It was a cool moment. It did last too long, though. I feel like this thing lasted a million years despite sticking the bugger surely dozens of times. I actually paused partway through wondering if I was doing something wrong and had to look up a video to make sure that I was like near the end of the fight, and I still had several more attacks to go. After a while, it just became a little bit more annoying than tense, unfortunately. But oh well, anyway, I don't know how much I love this story per se, but I did find it intriguing. But with regard to the game entire, or the DLC entire rather, like so many others, I feel like I just wanted a little bit more. Just a little bit more explorable area, more depth, more connection to the base game, a little bit more story, just a little bit more. This DLC is perfectly completable in just a couple of hours. That's how relatively little there is to it. If you play it as poorly as I did, it might take a handful of hours, and it's cool that you can play it at any point in the main game, but I certainly sympathize with the folk saying they wanted more. To round back to the top of the review, $20. I might have been happy with that price point, but that is affected by the fact that I paid the equivalent of $30 for this, which is certainly too much. Do I recommend The Order of Giants? Yes and no.
Ooh, that's bad.
For the most part, it's more of the base game.
That's good.
But it doesn't add that much substance either.
That's bad.
I enjoyed my time with the game to the capacity that I was emotionally available to.
That's good.
But it's also nowhere near the slam dunk that the Great Circle was either.
That's bad.
Can I go now?
I think this is a mixed bag. If you've already bought the base game and you are wondering whether to play the DLC now or to wait, I would probably recommend waiting for it to go on sale. No doubt it does at some point here, and again I say, to you Game Pass players who'd have to buy the base game and the DLC to play it, yeah, it's probably not quite worth that. I'm disappointed to say it, but that is certainly how I feel. Thank you so much for watching this review. These past few weeks have been tremendously tough for me for personal, fluctuating, and emotional reasons, and because of nose surgery, which went well, but whose recovery actually took a lot more out of me than I had thought it would. I had originally planned to follow up finishing this month's kind of content with live streaming Ghost of Tsushima over on this second channel here just ahead of Ghost of Yotei's release, and then being able to stream that in October, but unfortunately I do not think that's going to happen anymore. I'm really disappointed by that, and I hate to break the promise that I've basically made for like 2 months at this point, saying that I would do that. I just have a little bit too much to catch up on at this point that I was not expecting to be struggling with quite to this degree. I'll try to stream Ghost of Yotei still, but there's no promises on that one. It's just been quite the month, and October is going to be quite another month. I am sure I can already feel that weighing on me right now in late September. So I might just stick with the Little Nightmares games for spooky season like I'd kind of loosely planned. That'll probably be the extent of my live stream testing here in the near future. At this point, I make no real promises, but thanks for watching nonetheless. What did you think of The Order of Giants if you have played it? Let me know in the comments below. For now, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.